Hey, Ron Hutchins here. Let's take a few minutes and talk about the National Association of Realtors lawsuit and the proposed settlements that are all over the national news and how it affects you and I here in Maine. First, a little background. The lawsuit, which began in 2019, alleges the National Association of Realtors, along with some of the largest real estate brands and affiliated multiple listing services, violated antitrust laws. More specifically, the lawsuit targeted what's known as the MLS Cooperative Compensation Model Rule. Ironically, this is a rule that was actually introduced in the 1990s by consumer protection advocates to protect buyers and buyer representation. And now they're ruling against it. The lawsuits and the proposed settlements were never about what brokers charge for commission. What they are about is the transparency around the seller understanding that cooperative commission is not required and that it is negotiable if it's being offered. Now, typical of the media, they've done a great job sensationalizing the potential savings to consumers. Only recently has there been some reporting about how this could actually adversely affect sellers and the buyers that the MLS rule was meant to protect. NAR and many of the others named in the lawsuit have reached and submitted proposed settlements, which all still need to be approved by the courts, which is expected to happen mid-July of this year. And there's going to be a lot of changes probably and more information coming out between now and then. The Department of Justice wants to see the seller and the buyer commission decoupled, wants to see them separated, leaving each party to pay for their own representation, along with some other disclosure-related changes. The decoupling of the commission in the courts and the DOJ's opinion will encourage clearer understanding and greater transparency between the client and the agent. Currently, both the seller's broker commission and the buyer's broker commission are accounted for as a debit on the seller side of the settlement statement. Under the proposal, the buyer's broker commission will be moved over to the buyer's side of the settlement statement, therefore making it an additional expense to the buyer, or at least on paper. As part of the settlement proposal, it would require buyers to have a written representation agreement signed with a buyer broker prior to even touring a home. And in that agreement, how the buyer's broker is to be paid and how much they are to be paid will be negotiated and spelled out in advance. If you're a buyer, you'll need to decide if you want to commit to a representation agreement and to potentially be responsible for your agent's commission before you even tour a home. Maybe you'll want to go it alone without any representation and work directly with a seller's agent, who, by the way, has a legal and fiduciary duty to make the best deal with the highest price and the best terms for the seller. Now, I'll cover more of this in another video a little later about why, as a buyer, you should have representation. Meanwhile, when listing their property, sellers will need to decide if they want to offer an incentive to a buyer, which would obviously be used to help them pay for the buyer's broker fee. Under the proposed settlement, the seller will still be able to offer an incentive to buyers, but will not be able to display the offer of compensation directly to a buyer's broker through the MLS. If approved by the court, this may be offered as a buyer concession, and it could be included in the listing description. For example, a seller will pay X percent of the purchase price towards the buyer's closing expense. If the seller's offering a flat fee, it might say something like the seller will pay X amount of dollars towards the buyer's closing costs. Fortunately, here in Maine, we've been ahead of the curve in all of this, and we are one of only a handful of states that has had or uses a written exclusive buyer representation agreement since the early 1990s. We have always allowed sellers to negotiate listing commissions with their broker, and listing brokers have always disclosed that a portion of that commission is going to be shared with the buyer broker. Maine's buyer-broker agreement has had a provision for the buyer to pay a portion of the buyer-broker commission if the offer from the seller doesn't quite meet the minimum commission agreed to between the buyer and his or her agent. As a professional, I believe improved communication between the client and the agent is a positive step. I also believe that market conditions will determine if there are any savings to be had by one party or another, or maybe both parties will benefit. I do foresee buyer broker commissions will be reduced to some degree. Just how much will be determined by market conditions and the buyer broker's worth. You know, how much experience did they bring to the table? Experienced brokers that have a reputation for being able to provide their clients with a reliable, dependable consulting and known to deliver a smooth transaction experience will deserve more and will likely charge more than their lesser experienced counterparts. Ultimately, the market will decide. In a buyer's market where it takes months to sell a home, I believe sellers will be very eager to offer concessions to buyers, and just the opposite in a seller's market. I hope you found this informative, and there will be more videos to follow as this all shakes out. If you'd like to go a little deeper into this topic and how it applies specifically to you and to your situation, give me a call or drop me a text or an email. I'm always happy to talk about all things real estate. So have a great day.